family and friends of Stacy Charles say a New Orleans woman who was killed in Baton Rouge last week are celebrating her life.
She was stabbed to death by her ex-boyfriend.
November 13th, 2025, 2:13 a.m. A parking lot in Baton Rouge. A 23-year-old woman named Stacy Charles is lying on the pavement. Multiple stab wounds. Blood pooling beneath her. The attacker has fled. But here's what nobody's talking about. 7 women had already warned the system about him. 7 protective orders. 7 separate legal documents that screamed, "This man is dangerous." And just 1 week before Stacy was murdered, a judge let him walk out of jail for $2,500. $2,500. That's what her life was reduced to. Stacy Charles did everything right. She filed police reports. She got a restraining order. She called for help. She trusted the system to protect her, and the system let him kill her anyway. Her killer? Stephen Heinrich Jr., 28 years old, not a random stranger, her ex-boyfriend. A man with a criminal file so thick it should have been a flashing red alarm. But instead of keeping him locked up, the court gave him one more shot, one more chance to prove he could follow the rules. He didn't. Now, before we go any further, I need you to stay with me until the end, because I'm going to give you 2 life-saving tips on how to recognize the warning signs of domestic violence and how to escape before it's too late. This isn't just about Stacy's story. This is about making sure you or someone you love doesn't become the next one. But first, you need to understand how this happened. How 7 warnings across 6 different states and 1 catastrophic decision created the perfect storm for murder. Here's the question that haunts this entire case. If the system had 7 chances to stop him, why didn't anyone listen? I want you to think about that. Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me what you think went wrong, because this isn't just a failure of one judge or one court. This is bigger than that. And if you believe that victims like Stacy deserve better than a $2,500 bail and a broken promise of protection, then hit that subscribe button right now. We're covering cases where the system failed, where the people in power looked the other way, and the only way we force change is by refusing to stay silent. So let's talk about the year leading up to that night. Because this murder, it wasn't sudden, it was predictable. Welcome to True Crime Footprint, where we unveil the darkest mysteries and the most terrifying true crime tales. Kindly hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our new stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. Stasy Charles wasn't naive. She wasn't reckless. She was a 23-year-old woman trying to escape a nightmare that had been following her for over a year. October 6, 2025. Stacy walks into a courthouse and files for a restraining order against Stephen Heinrich Jr. In her testimony, she lays it all out. The stalking, the physical assaults. He punched her. He threatened her life. Not once. Not in a heated argument. Repeatedly, over months. He told her he would kill her, and she believed him. Now here's the part that should make you angry. This wasn't Stacy's first attempt to protect herself. Earlier in their relationship, she had tried to get a protective order, but she couldn't make it to court. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she couldn't afford to miss work. Maybe he threatened her into staying silent. Whatever the reason, the case was dismissed. She tried to save herself, and the system said, not good enough. So she tried again. Fast forward to November 5th, 2025. Stacy contacts the police after another battery incident. This time they arrest him. Stephen Heinrich Jr. is charged with battery of a dating partner. This is her last lifeline. She's done everything law enforcement asked her to do. She's given them the evidence. She's given them the history. She's handed them a case on a silver platter. And finally, a protective order is issued. He cannot go near her home. He cannot go near her work. He cannot go near her school. For the first time in months, maybe Stacy felt like she could breathe. Maybe she started thinking about what came next. Maybe she was planning to move, to start over, to rebuild a life without looking over her shoulder every 5 seconds. She thought the worst was over. She thought the system would hold. But while Stasy was trying to rebuild, Stephen Heinrich Jr. was already planning his next move. And the system, it handed him the keys. Because just 24 hours after that protective order was served, he was out, free, walking the same streets as her, and the clock started ticking. Before we go further, I want to display some of Stacy's social media posts so you could get a proper idea of how her ideas and opinion led to her death. So here's my question for you. If someone violates your trust once, how many more chances should they get? 2, 3, 7? Drop your answer below. I want to hear your honest take on this. And if you think abusers shouldn't get a free pass just because the charge says misdemeanor, then smash that like button and share this video. Because the more people who see this, the harder it becomes for the system to ignore it. Now let's talk about what the court knew, or what they should have known. When Stephen Heinrich Jr. was booked into jail on November 5th, the Baton Rouge police discovered something that should have stopped everything in its tracks. 7 protective orders. 7. 1 in Louisiana. That was Stacy's, but 6 more from other states. 6 other women who had to legally beg for protection from this man. 6 separate court cases where a woman stood in front of a judge and said, "I am afraid for my life." Let that sink in for a second. This wasn't his first time. This wasn't even his second or third. This was a pattern, a multi-state calculated pattern of control and violence. In New York alone, he had prior arrests for violating a protective order and criminal mischief. He had a history of ignoring the law, breaking court orders, and continuing to terrorize the women who tried to get away from him. But here's the problem. Protective orders don't always transfer cleanly between states. The system isn't designed to track someone like Heinrich across state lines. So when he moved from New York to Louisiana, he essentially got to start over. Clean slate. And every new jurisdiction saw him as a first-time offender. He exploited that gap, and it worked. November 5th, maybe November 6th, 2025, Heinrich appears before Commissioner Keena Kimball for his bond hearing. The DA's office informs her that he has prior arrests in New York for violating a protective order and criminal mischief. That information alone should have been enough to keep him locked up. But here's where it gets murky. Did Commissioner Kimball know about the other 6 protective orders? Did the DA's office pull the full file? Did anyone take the time to dig deeper? Either they didn't know or they didn't care. Either way, the result was the same. Bail is set at $2,500. He posts it immediately, walks out, free, $2,500. That's what Stacy's life was worth to the system that day. He's released, served with the protective order that says he can't go near her. And within 1 week, Stacy Charles is dead. So what did he do in that week? And why didn't anyone stop him before it was too late? How many warnings does someone need to give before the system finally listens? 7 wasn't enough, apparently. So what is? 10? 20? Tell me in the comments, and be honest. Now, I know some of you still haven't hit subscribe. Maybe you think you don't need this content. Maybe you think it won't happen to you or anyone you know. That's fine. But if that's the case, do me a favor. Drop a comment and tell me why. Tell me what you need to see before you subscribe, because I'm reading every single one, and maybe you'll help me make this channel better. But for those of you who understand why this matters, let's keep going. Because what happens next is the part nobody wants to talk about. November 13th, 2025, 2:13 a.m. Stephen Heinrich Jr. arrives at Stacy's home. She's in her car. Maybe she just got back from work. Maybe she was sitting there for a moment, gathering herself before heading inside. Maybe for the first time in months, she thought she was safe. She wasn't. He rams her vehicle with his. Hard enough to trap her, hard enough to make sure she couldn't drive away. Then he gets out. He drags her from the car, and he stabs her, over and over. When police arrive, they find Stacy lying in the parking lot with several large stab wounds. She's rushed to the hospital. Doctors try to save her, but the damage is too severe. Stacy Charles dies in surgery. 23 years old. Gone. Meanwhile, Heinrich flees the scene, but he's not done yet. He swerves into oncoming traffic and crashes head-on into another vehicle. Then, while still sitting in his car, he sets himself on fire. Police arrive. They extinguish the flames. He's rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. The next day, November 14th, Stephen Heinrich Jr. dies. Stacy fought. She did everything right. She filed reports. She got a restraining order. She called the police. She trusted the system to do its job. And it still wasn't enough.
Balloons taking flight to honor the life of a woman lost to domestic violence. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Family and friends of Stacy Charles say a New Orleans woman who was killed in Baton Rouge last week are celebrating her life.
She was stabbed to death by her ex-boyfriend. The investigative unit's Best Casualty has been following this story closely. She reports tonight from Gretna, where that memorial took place, and has new information on the circumstances that led up to her murder.
Michael, Sylvia, we're here in Gretna, which is near Charles's hometown of Harvey. There were dozens of people, they're still lingering here behind me, that came to celebrate her life, releasing purple balloons in her honor.
The WBRZ investigative unit has obtained more documents showing the rocky relationship history that led to 2 deaths. According to Baton Rouge police, 28-year-old Stephen Heinrich stabbed 23-year-old Stacy Charles to death before crashing his car and setting himself on fire. Court documents show Charles had tried to protect herself from Heinrich multiple times before her death. In a protective order request filed in October in family court, Charles says Heinrich was physically abusive, having checked these boxes, saying he punched, shoved, and threatened her life with a weapon. However, in her written description of the abuse, she does not mention violence, instead stating he was relentlessly harassing and stalking her and her family through social media.
He created like any dating site, any type of thing. This man would create a page for my daughter.
It's behavior that Dominique Ramkaran and her family know well.
Everything that he did to my daughter, he was doing to the same girl.
Ramkaran lives in New York, where Heinrich is from. She says he harassed and stalked her daughter for months before he met Charles.
A year and a half, you harassed and stalked my daughter. A year and a half, you have tortured us.
In fact, it got so bad it led Ramkaran to file a civil suit against Heinrich when she says the police wouldn't take it seriously. According to her, he had been arrested in New York for violating a protective order several times.
The system failed both of these young ladies.
In Baton Rouge, Heinrich was never served with that initial protective order by Charles because officers couldn't find him. The matter was ultimately dismissed because Charles didn't show up to court. A month later, Heinrich was arrested for misdemeanor domestic abuse against Charles, and she was granted a protective order. He was issued a $2,500 bond by Commissioner Keena Kimball, and a week later stabbed Charles to death. Ramkaran says her death could have been prevented.
So how does a man that has a flipping assault, like a harassment, has probation, have warrants, were able to slip through the system, get a $2,500 bail, and was able to go back to the same young lady that he harassed and kill her?
District Attorney Hiller Moore is currently out of the country and said he did not want to comment on this case until he has all the facts, which he assures me his office is working to get. What we do know is when Heinrich went in front of Commissioner Kimball for his domestic abuse charge, the DA's office did let her know that he had been previously arrested for violating a protective order as well as a criminal mischief charge, both out of the state of New York. In terms of those protective orders that Baton Rouge police says that they found and that we know exist in New York, it's not sure why the DA's office did not have that information at the time.
Now I promised you 2 tips at the beginning of this video. 2 things that could save your life or the life of someone you love. So here they are. Tip number 1, recognize the lethality indicators. If someone is stalking you, threatening to kill you, or has a history of violence, especially if they violated protective orders before, you are in extreme danger. Don't downplay it. Don't wait. Don't think it'll get better on its own. Contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Create a safety plan immediately. This isn't about overreacting. This is about survival. Tip 2, document everything and tell someone. Keep records of every threat, every encounter, every violation. Screenshots, texts, emails, witness names, dates and times, everything. And tell someone you trust, a friend, a family member, a coworker, someone who can speak for you if something happens. Because the system might fail you, but your community doesn't have to. Stacy's death should have been the end of the story, but it's not, because when the perpetrator dies, the system escapes accountability, and that's exactly what happened here. So let me ask you this. If the person who hurt you is gone, does that mean justice was served? I don't think so. Tell me if you disagree. If you believe Stasy deserved better, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're not letting cases like this disappear into the background. We're holding the system accountable. And the only way we do that is by making sure people keep paying attention. Now let's talk about what happened after the headlines faded. With Stephen Heinrich Jr. dead, there's no trial, no conviction, No public reckoning in a courtroom where Stacy's family could look him in the eye and demand answers. The investigation shifts. The focus moves to the institutions, the court, the DA's office, the police, because someone has to answer for this. Local news outlets like WBRZ immediately obtained court documents. The public saw everything: the 7 protective orders, the $2,500 bail, the timeline, and people were furious. District Attorney Hiller Moore's response: "We won't comment until we've gathered all the facts." Translation: they didn't have all the facts when it mattered most. Social media erupted. Justice for Stacy Charles. People wanted answers. How does a man with 7 protective orders slip through the cracks? How does a $2,500 bail become a death sentence? And here's the thing. This isn't just about Baton Rouge. This is about a broken system that prioritizes procedure over protection. Abusers like Heinrich exploit jurisdictional gaps. Courts fail to aggregate risk data, and victims pay the price. Stacy did everything right. She filed the reports, she got the restraining order, she called for help, and she still died because the people whose job it was to protect her didn't do theirs. To Stacy's family, I'm sorry. I'm sorry the system failed her. I'm sorry she's not here. And I'm sorry that her story had to become a warning for others. So here's the question we're left with. How many more Stasys have to die before the system changes? Do you think Commissioner Keena Kimball should be held accountable for setting that bail? Do you think the DA's office failed Stasy? Drop your honest opinion in the comments. This is where the conversation starts. If you made it this far, thank you. Seriously, most people don't. But you did. And that matters. Because the only way we change the system is by refusing to look away. So here's what I need you to do. Hit that like button if you believe victims deserve better. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you stand with survivors, if you believe abusers like Stephen Heinrich Jr. shouldn't get 7 chances to hurt people, then subscribe and turn on that bell. Because we're not stopping, and neither should you. What's your take on this? Comment below. I'm reading every single one. Our hearts ache for Stacy's family. Words feel inadequate, but please know you are held in deepest sympathy and prayers. May you find strength and comfort in the memories of Stacy. Thank you for watching, for your attention, and for joining us on this journey of reflection. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and above all, stay safe. See you on our next video.